Good evening. Welcome, welcome. Welcome to my garden, in my forest. I want to read you some fairy tales today. Right? It's nice ambience. I wanted to get something comfy piano, magical forest. It rained too, yes. But I haven't chosen which stories to read yet. Any Brothers Grimm tale is okay, so I will take requests if you guys have any that you want me to read. I don't know, I was thinking maybe not the popular ones. I don't know, maybe people like the popular ones. Yeah, you can vote. My favorite? I don't have a favorite. You need a vote, but there's too many. I don't even know how to narrow them down to vote. Which ones are the most deeply unsettling? There's one called Godfather Death. That sounds pretty unsettling. Let's go with that one. Okay, I'm kind of curious. I think it's a short one. Wait, maybe I should put on the screen. Now, reading Godfather Death. Maybe... Hold on. It's like the now playing button. I don't know where to put it. Nap time, right? I'll try not to be too loud. But I don't promise that I'm gonna be completely serious the whole stream. Shall we begin? Shall we read? Do you have a cup of tea? I have one, but I think it's too hot to drink right now. I just made it. Spring cherry again. Wishing it was spring still. I know I would have liked to use the K100, but I get nervous using it like not in the middle of the night because there can be many sounds, like even more bears than normal. All kinds of sounds. Oh, also, I did want to mention too, this will be a shorter stream. Gura is doing something in about 2 hours, so I will plan to end before then. But until then, let's have a cozy read along of some maybe not so cozy tales. I feel like I have to increase the font size on this. My eyes. My eyes. I thought about buying a book, like a physical book for this of fairy tales, because then maybe you could hear the pages turning, but well, just pretend I have a book. But then I might be looking down the whole time. Page turning. I don't think I actually have any books in here. I could just grab a random book and flip the pages as I read and pretend. You wouldn't even have known if I didn't tell you, except when you were like, why are the page turns so random? I could go on audio stock and get a page turning sound effect and just play that. Alright, let's just get started, shall we? Let's read. First story, Godfather Death. A poor man had 12 children and was forced to work night and day to give them even bread. When therefore the 13th came into the world, he knew not what to do in his trouble, but ran out into the great highway, and resolved to ask the first person whom he met to be godfather. The first to meet him was the good God, who already knew what filled his heart, and said to him, "Poor man, I pity you. I will hold your child at its christening, and will take charge of it and make it happy on earth." The man said, "Who are you?" "I am God." "Then I do not deserve to have you for a godfather," said the man. "You give to the rich and leave the poor to hunger." Thus spoke the man, for he did not know how wisely God apportions. I also can't read riches and poverty. He turned therefore away from the Lord and went farther. The devil came to him and said, "What do you seek? If you will take me as godfather for your child, I will give him gold in plenty and all the joys of the world as well." The man asked, "Who are you?" "I am the devil." "Then I do not desire to have you for godfather," said the man. "You deceive men and lead them astray." He went onwards, and then came Death striding up to him with withered legs, and said, "Take me as godfather." The man asked, "Who are you?" "I am Death, and I make all equal." "Then," said the man, "you are the right one. You take the rich as well as the poor, without distinction. You shall be godfather." Death answered, "I will make your child rich and famous, for he who has me for a friend can lack nothing." The man said, "Next Sunday is the christening. Be there at the right time." Death appeared as he had promised, and stood godfather quite in the usual way. When the boy had grown up, his godfather one day appeared and bade him go with him. He led him forth into a forest, and showed him an herb which grew there, and said, "Now you shall receive your godfather's present. I make you a celebrated physician. When you are called to a patient, I will always appear to you. If I stand by the head of the sick man, you may say with confidence that you will make him well again, and if you give him this herb, he will recover. But if I stand by the patient's feet, he is mine, and you must say that all remedies are in vain, and that no physician in the world could save him. But beware of using the herb against my will, or it might fare ill with you." It was not long before the youth was the most famous physician in the whole world. He had only to look at the patient, and he knew his condition at once, whether he would recover or must needs die. So they said of him, and from far and wide people came to him, sent for him when they had anyone ill, and gave him so much money that he soon became a rich man. Now it so befell that the king became ill, and the physician was summoned, and was to say if recovery were possible. But when he came to bed, Death was standing by the feet of the sick man, and the herb did not grow which could save him. "If I could but cheat Death for once," thought the physician, "he is sure to take it ill if I do but. As I am his godson, he will shut one eye. I will risk it." He therefore took up the sick man and laid him the other way, so that now Death was standing by his head. Then he gave the king some of the herbs, and he recovered and grew healthy again. But Death came to the physician, looking very black and angry, threatened him with his finger, and said, "You have betrayed me. This time I will pardon it, as you are my godson. But if you venture it again, it will cost you your neck, for I will take you yourself away with me." Soon afterwards, the king's daughter fell into a severe illness. She was his only child, and he wept day and night, so that he began to lose the sight of his eyes. And he caused it to be made known that whoever rescued her from death should be her husband and inherit the crown. When the physician came to the sick girl's bed, he saw Death by her feet. He ought to have remembered the warning given by his godfather, but he was so infatuated by the great beauty of the king's daughter and the happiness of becoming her husband that he flung all thought to the winds. He did not see that Death was casting angry glances on him, that he was raising his hand in the air and threatening him with his withered fist. He raised up the sick girl and placed her head where her feet had lain. Then he gave her some of the herb, and instantly her cheeks flushed red, and life stirred afresh in her. When Death saw that for a second time his own property had been misused, he walked up to the physician with long strides and said, "All is over with you, and now the lot falls on you," and seized him so firmly with his ice-cold hand that he could not resist, and led him into a cave below the earth. There he saw how thousands and thousands of candles were burning in countless rows, some large, some medium-sized, others small. Every instant some were extinguished, and others again burnt up, so that the flames seemed to leap hither and thither in perpetual change. "See," said Death, "these are the lights of men's lives. The large ones belong to children, and the medium-sized ones to married people in their prime. The little ones belong to old people, but children and young folks likewise have often a tiny candle." "Show me the light of my life," said the physician, and he thought it would still be very tall. Death pointed to a little end which was just threatening to go out, and said, "Behold, it is there." "Ah, dear godfather," said the horrified physician, "light a new one for me. Do it for love of me, that I may enjoy my life, be king and the husband of the king's beautiful daughter." "I cannot," answered Death. "One must go out before a new light is lit. Then place the old one on a new one. That will go on burning at once when the old one has come to an end," pleading the physician. Death behaved as if he were going to fulfill his wish, and took hold of a tall new candle, but as he desired to revenge himself, he purposefully made a mistake in fixing it, and the little piece fell down and was extinguished. Immediately the physician fell on the ground, and now he himself was in the hands of Death. The end. That was a good one. I liked that one. Fairy tales, they are meant to teach you a lesson, right? What is the lesson here? You can't cheat death. Return to nature. That was a good one. What else do we have? Any requests? Do you have any favorite? The white snake? I see that one a few times. Which ones did Kronii read? I feel like Kronii should have read The White Snake. The Boros. The Snow Queen. is pretty short too. All of them are short. We can read so many. Okay. Second story. The White Snake. A long time ago, there lived a king who was famed for his wisdom through all the land. Nothing was hidden from him, and it seemed as if news of the most secret things was brought to him through the air. But he had a strange custom. Every day after dinner, when the table was cleared and no one else was present, a trusty servant had to bring him one more dish. It was covered, however, and even the servant did not know what was in it, and neither did anyone know, for the king never took off the cover to eat of it until he was quite alone. This had gone on for a long time, when one day the servant, who took away the dish, was overcome with such curiosity that he could not help carrying the dish into his room. When he had carefully locked the door, he lifted up the cover and saw a white snake lying on the dish. But when he saw it, he could not deny himself the pleasure of tasting it, so he cut off a little bit and put it into his mouth. No sooner had it touched his tongue than he heard a strange whispering of little voices outside his window. He went and listened, and then noticed that it was the sparrows who were chattering together and telling one another of all kinds of things which they had seen in the fields and woods. Eating the snake had given him power of understanding the language of animals. Now it so happened that on this very day, the queen lost her most beautiful ring, and suspicion of having stolen it fell upon this trusty servant, who was allowed to go everywhere. The king ordered the man to be brought before him, and threatened with angry words that unless he could before the morrow point out the thief, he himself should be looked upon as guilty and executed. In vain he declared his innocence. He was dismissed with no better answer. In his trouble and fear he went down into the courtyard and took thought how to help himself out of his trouble. Now some ducks were sitting together quietly by a brook and talking with their rest, and whilst they were making their feathers smooth with their bills, they were having a confidential conversation together. The servant stood by and listened. They were telling one another of all the places where they had been waddling about all the morning, and what good food they had found, and one said in a pitiful tone, "Something lies heavy on my stomach, as I was eating in haste and I swallowed a ring which lay under the queen's window." The servant at once seized her by the neck, carried her to the kitchen, and said to the cook, "Here is a fine duck. Pray kill her." "Yes," said the cook, and weighed her in his hand. She had spared no trouble to fatten herself, and has been waiting to be roasted long enough. So he cut off her head, and as she was being dressed for the spit, the queen's ring was found inside her. The servant could now easily prove his innocence, and the king, to make amends for the wrong, allowed him to ask a favor, and promised him the best place in the court that he could wish for. The servant refused everything, and only asked for a horse and some money for traveling, as he had a mind to see the world and go about a little. When his request was granted, he set out on his way, and one day came to a pond, where he saw 3 fishes caught in the reeds and gasping for water. Now, though it is said that fishes are dumb, he heard them lamenting that they must perish so miserably, and, as he had a kind heart, he got off his horse and put the 3 prisoners back into the water. They leapt with delight, put out their heads, and cried to him, "We will remember you and repay you for saving us." He rode on, and after a while it seemed to him that he heard a voice in the sand at his feet. He listened, and heard an ant-king complain, "Why cannot folks, with their clumsy beasts, keep off our bodies? That stupid horse, with his heavy hooves, has been treading down my people without mercy." So he turned on to side path, and the ant-king cried out to him, "We will remember you. One good turn deserves another." The path led him into a wood, and there he saw 2 old ravens standing by their nest and throwing out their young ones. "Out with you, you idle, good-for-nothing creatures," cried they. "We cannot find food for you any longer. You are big enough and can provide for yourselves." But the poor young ravens lay upon the ground, flapping their wings and crying, "Oh, what helpless chicks we are! We must shift for ourselves, and yet we cannot fly. What we can do but lie here and starve." So the good young fellow alighted and killed his horse with his sword, and gave it to them for food. Then they came hopping up to it, satisfied their hunger, and cried, "We will remember you. One good turn deserves another." And now he had to use his own legs, and when he had walked a long way, he came to a large city. There was a great noise and crowd in the streets, and a man rode up on horseback, crying aloud, "The king's daughter wants a husband, but whoever seeks her hand must perform a hard task, and if he does not succeed, he will forfeit his life." Many had already made the attempt, but in vain. Nevertheless, when the youth saw the king's daughter, he was so overcome by her great beauty that he forgot all danger, went before the king, and declared himself a suitor. So he was led out to the sea, and a gold ring was thrown into it before his eyes. Then the king ordered him to fetch this ring from the bottom of the sea, and added, "If you come up again without it, you will be thrown in again and again until you perish amid the waves." All the people grieved for the handsome youth. Then they went away, leaving him alone by the sea. He stood on the shore and considered what he should do, when suddenly he saw 3 fishes come swimming towards him, and they were the very fishes whose lives he had saved. The one in the middle held a mussel in its mouth, which it laid on the shore at the youth's feet, and when he had taken it up and opened it, there lay the gold ring in the shell. Full of joy, he took it to the king, and expected that he would grant him the promised reward. But when the proud princess perceived that he was not her equal in birth, she scorned him, and required him first to perform another task. She went down into the garden, and strewed with her own hands 10 sacks full of millet seed on the grass. Then she said, "Tomorrow morning before sunrise, these must be picked up, and not a single grain be wanting." The youth sat down in the garden and considered how it might be possible to perform this task, but he could think of nothing, and there he sat sorrowfully awaiting the break of day when he should be led to death. But as soon as the first rays of sun shone into the garden, he saw all the 10 sacks standing side by side, quite full, and not a single grain was missing. The Ant King had come in the night with thousands and thousands of ants, and the grateful creatures had by great industry picked up all of the millet seed and gathered them into the sacks. Presently the king's daughter herself came into the garden, and was amazed to see that the young man had done the task she had given him. But she could not yet conquer her proud heart, and said, "Although he had performed both the tasks, he shall not be my husband until he has brought me an apple from the tree of life." The youth did not know where the tree of life stood, but he set out, and would have gone on forever, as long as his legs would carry him, though he had no hope of finding it. After he had wandered through 3 kingdoms, he came one evening to a wood, and lay down under a tree to sleep. But he heard a rustling in the branches, and a golden apple fell into his hand. At the same time, 3 ravens flew down to him, perched themselves upon his knee, and said, "We are the 3 young ravens whom you saved from starving. When we had grown big and heard that you were seeking the golden apple, we flew over the sea to the end of the world, where the tree of life stands, and have brought you the apple." The youth, full of joy, set out homewards, and took the golden apple to the king's beautiful daughter, who had no more excuses left to make. They cut the apple of life in 2 and ate it together, and then her heart became full of love for him, and they lived in undisturbed happiness to a great age. The end. That was, I suppose, a happier ending. But that man really did kill his horse. Doesn't this imply that he could have talked to the horse too? He could have understood what the horse was saying? Also, He's really going through a lot of effort for this king's daughter who didn't even seem to like him. I guess it's good that she fell in love with him once he gave her the apple, but how do you know she doesn't just like him because of his apple? I agree, she's not worth it. He needs to find someone. Find someone who likes him for who he is. This was a good one, though. Did you suggest it because the golden apple? It is. It's my apple. Any next request? That was your favorite fairy tale as a kid? That one was a little less depressing. King of the Golden Mountain? Juniper tree? I am just picking randomly, by the way. Your messages in chat. Fairy tale morality. Pretty and rich equals good. Is there a story that goes against that? I feel like there must be. But then I'm like, even in like Cinderella, you know? She becomes pretty and rich in the end anyway. Poe should be in the public domain too? Let me look this up. You're right. Because he's so old. Ooh. We could read some Poe too. Let's read these stories though. First. This one is the King of the Golden Mountain. The King of the Golden Mountain. I haven't read a lot of these either. So it's fun for me to read them for the first time too. Let me guess, he has a daughter. You sensing a theme? An original Fauna story. I'll read you mine when I finish it. I do love fairy tales though. They're my favorite kind of thing to write. Okay. Let's read The King of the Golden Mountain. There was a certain merchant who had 2 children, a boy and a girl. They were both young and could not walk. And 2 richly laden ships of his sailed forth to sea with all his property on board, and just as he was expecting to win much money by them, news came that they had gone to the bottom, and now instead of being a rich man, he was a poor one, and had nothing left but one field outside the town. In order to drive his misfortune a little out of his thoughts, he went out to this field, and as he was walking to and fro in it, a little black mannequin stood suddenly by his side, and asked why he was so sad, and what he was taking so much to heart. Then said the merchant, "If you could help me, I would willingly tell you." "Who knows," replied the black dwarf. "Perhaps I can help you." Then the merchant told him that all he possessed had gone to the bottom of the sea, and that he had nothing left but this field. "Do not trouble yourself," said the dwarf. "If you will promise to give me the first thing that rubs itself against your leg when you are at home again, and to bring it here to this place in 12 years' time, you shall have as much money as you will." The merchant thought, "What can that be but my dog?" and did not remember his little boy. So he said yes, give the black man a written and sealed promise, and went home. When he reached home, his little boy was so delighted that he held himself by a bench, trotted up to him, and seized him fast by the legs. The father was shocked, for he remembered his promise, and now knew what he had pledged himself to do. As, however, he still found no money in his chest, he thought the dwarf had only been jesting. A month afterwards, he went up to the garret, intending to gather together some old tin and to sell it, and saw lying there a great heap of money. Then he was happy again, made purchases, became a greater merchant than before, and felt that God was good to him. In the meantime, the boy grew tall, and at the same time bright and clever. But the nearer to the 12th year approached, the more anxious grew the merchant, so that his distress might be seen in his face. One day his son asked what ailed him, but the father would not say. The boy, however, persisted so long that at last he told him that without being aware of what he was doing, he had promised him to a black dwarf, and he had received much money for doing so. He said likewise that he had set his hand and seal to this, and that now, when 12 years had gone by, he would have to give him up. Then said the son, "O father, do not be uneasy, all will go well. The black man has no power over me." The son had himself blessed by the priest, and when the time came, father and son went together to the field, and the son made a circle and placed himself inside it with his father. Then came the black dwarf and said to the old man, "Have you brought with you that which you have promised me?" He was silent, but the son asked, "What do you want here?" Then said the black dwarf, "I have to speak with your father, and not with you." The son replied, "You have betrayed me and misled my father. Give back the writing." "No," said the black dwarf, "I will not give up my rights." They spoke together for a long time after this, but at last they agreed that the son, as he did not belong to the enemy of mankind, nor yet to his father, should seat himself in a small boat, which should lie on water which was flowing away from them, and that the father should push it off with his own foot, and then the son should remain given up to the water. So he took leave of his father, placed himself in a little boat, and the father had to push it off with his own foot. The boat capsized so that the keel was the uppermost and the deck under water, and the father believed his son was lost, and went home and mourned for him. The boat, however, did not sink, but floated quietly away, and the boy sat safely inside it, and floated thus for a long time, until at last it ran into an unknown shore. Then he landed and saw a beautiful castle before him, and set out to go to it. But when he entered it, he found that it was bewitched. He went through every room, but all were empty until he reached the last, where a snake lay coiled in a ring. The snake, however, was an enchanted maiden, who rejoiced to see him, and said, "Have you come, O my deliverer? I have already waited 12 years for you. This kingdom is bewitched, and you must set it free." "How can I do that?" he inquired. "Tonight come 12 black men covered with chains, who will ask what you are doing here, but be silent, give them no answer, and let them do what they will with you. They will torment you, beat you, stab you. Let everything pass, only do not speak. At 12 o'clock they must go away again. On the second night 12 others will come. On the third, 24, who will cut off your head, but at 12 o'clock their power will be over. And then if you had endured all and have not spoken the slightest word, I shall be released. I will come to you. I will have in a bottle some of the water of life. I will rub you with that, and then you will come to life again and be as healthy as before." Then said he, "I will gladly set you free," and everything happened just as she had said. The black men could not force a single word from him, and on the third night the snake became a beautiful princess, who came with the water of life and brought him back to life again. So she threw herself into his arms and kissed him, and there was joy and gladness in the whole castle. After this their marriage was celebrated, and he was the king of the Golden Mountain. They lived very happily together, and the queen bore a fine boy. 8 years had already gone by when the king bethought him of his father. His heart was moved, and he wished to visit him. The queen, however, would not let him go away, and said, "I know beforehand that it will cause my unhappiness." but he suffered her to have no rest until she consented. At their parting, she gave him a wishing ring and said, "Take this ring and put it on your finger, and then you will immediately be transported whithersoever you would be. Only you must promise me not to use it in wishing me away from this place, and wish thy father." That he promised her, put the ring on his finger, and wished himself at home, just outside the town where his father lived. Instantly he found himself there, and made for the town. But when he came to the gate, the sentries would not let him in, because he wore such strange and yet such rich and magnificent clothing. Then he went to a hill where a shepherd was watching his sheep, changed clothes with him, put on his old shepherd's coat, and then entered the town without hindrance. When he came to his father, he made himself known to him, but he did not at all believe that the shepherd was his son, and said he certainly had a son, but that he was dead long ago. However, as he saw he was a poor, needy shepherd, he would give him something to eat. Then the shepherd said to his parents, "I am verily your son. Do you know of no mark on my body by which you could recognize me?" "Yes," said his mother, "our son has a raspberry mark under his right arm." He slipped back his shirt, and they saw the raspberry under his right arm, and no longer doubted that he was their son. Then he told them that he was the king of the Golden Mountain, and a king's daughter was his wife, and that they had a fine son of 7 years old. Then said the father, "That is certainly not true. It is a fine kind of king who goes about in a ragged shepherd's coat." On this the son fell into a passion, and without thinking of his promise, turned his ring round and wished both his wife and child with him. They were there in a second, but the queen wept and reproached him, and said that he had broken his word and had brought misfortune upon her. He said, "I have done it thoughtlessly, and not with evil intention," and tried to calm her, and she pretended to believe this, but she had mischief in her mind. Then he led her out of the little town into the field, and showed her the stream where the little boat had been pushed off. And then he said, "I am tired. Sit down. I will sleep a while on your lap." And he laid his head on her lap, and she picked his lice for a while until he fell asleep. When he was asleep, she first drew the ring from his finger. Then she drew away the foot which was under him, leaving only the slipper behind her, and she took her child in her arms, and wished herself back in her own kingdom. When he awoke, there he lay, quite deserted, and his wife and child were gone, and so was the ring from his finger, and the slipper only was still there as a token. "Home to your parents you cannot return," thought he. "They would say you were a wizard. You must be off, and walk on until you arrive in your own kingdom." So he went away and came at length to a hill by which 3 giants were standing, disputing with each other because they did not know how to divide their father's property. When they saw him passing by, they called to him and said little men had quick wits, and that he was to divide their inheritance for them. The inheritance, however, consisted of a sword which, if anyone took it in his hand and said, "All heads off but mine," every head would lie on the ground. Secondly, of a cloak which made anyone who put it on invisible. Thirdly, of a pair of boots which could transport the wearer to any place he wished in a moment. He said, "Give me the 3 things that I may see if they are still in good condition." They gave him the cloak, and when he had put it on, he was invisible, and changed into a fly. Then he resumed his own form and said, "The cloak is a good one. Now give me the sword." They said, "No, we will not give you that. If you were to say, 'All heads off but mine,' all our heads would be off, and you alone would be left with yours." Nevertheless, they gave it to him on the condition that he was only to try it against a tree. This he did, and the sword cut it into the trunk of a tree as if it had been a blade of straw. Then he wanted to have the boots likewise, but they said, "No, we will not give them. If you had them on your feet, and you were to wish yourself at the top of the hill, we should be left down here with nothing." "Oh no," said he, "I will not do that." So they gave him the boots as well. And now when he had got all these things, he thought of nothing but his wife and child, and said as though to himself, "Oh, if I were but on the Golden Mountain," and at the same moment he vanished from the sight of the giants, and thus their inheritance was divided. When he was near his palace, he heard sounds of joy in fiddles and flutes, and the people told him that his wife was celebrating her wedding with another. Then he fell into a rage and said, "False woman, she betrayed and deserted me whilst I was asleep." So he put on his cloak and, unseen by all, went into the palace. When he entered the dining hall, a great table was spread with delicious food, and the guests were eating and drinking, and laughing and jesting. She sat on a royal seat in the midst of them in splendid apparel, with a crown upon her head. He placed himself behind her, and no one saw him. When she put a piece of meat on a plate for herself, he took it away and ate it. And when she poured out a glass of wine for herself, he took it away and drank it. She was always helping herself to something, and yet she never got anything, for plate and glass disappeared immediately. Then, dismayed and ashamed, she arose and went to her chamber and wept, but he followed her there. She said, "Has the devil power over me, or did my deliverer never come?" Then he struck her in the face and said, "Did your deliverer never come? It is he who has you in his power, you traitor. Have I deserved this from you?" Then he made himself visible, went into the hall, and cried, "The wedding is at an end. The true king has returned." The kings, princes, and counselors who were assembled there ridiculed and mocked him, but he did not trouble to answer them, and said, "Will you go away, or not?" On this they tried to seize him and pressed upon him, but he drew his sword and said, "All heads off but mine," and all the heads rolled onto the ground, and he alone was master, and once more king of the Golden Mountain. The end. My goodness. That was a wild one. What is the lesson? Don't be evil. I don't know. Stay in your lane. Don't make weird pacts with mythical creatures. Don't marry a snake. You're right. She was a snake. Now also might be a good time to mention that I am reading these stories, but that does not mean that I condone anything within them. I also do recall that it is written a long time ago. You know, yeah, I know you know. I just wanted to say it anyway. Disclaimer. Fairy tales are wild. Cancelled over this one. No. This one, the Juniper tree, surely will not be so. Cannot type. Not quite as wild as the last one, right? Too late learning, married a snake. I did like how as soon as they introduced the magical items, you already know where it's going with that. But do you think that he removed the head of his wife and child at the end too? I kind of think that he did. I liked it. It was kind of funny though when he was just eating her food and drinking her wine. That part was pretty funny. If he had just left it at that, that would have been fine. Yeah, I don't know if we put on our literary analysis hat. I think that story was interesting because it starts off with the father of the main character who is like making deals with magical creatures in order to gain richness or riches. And then the sun does the same thing in a different way. It did keep going. Oh gosh, the torturers too. I have no idea what that was about. That was very strange. You liked the giants getting absolutely scammed? They didn't deserve that. They didn't deserve that. That story gave you trauma. Need something comfy next? Oh, I don't know if this one's gonna be comfy. Sorry, I'm like reading. I'm reading. I'm searching a little bit. That's fine. That's fine. There are no comfy fairy tales. Kinda true. Maybe we should read at least one of the famous ones. I was gonna say we can switch to Poe, but that's probably even worse. At least Poe is a little more coherent. I mean, I love fairy tales. Sometimes I love them for how incoherent they seem, but okay, let's read the Juniper tree. It is now long ago, quite 2,000 years, since there was a rich man who had a beautiful and pious wife, and they loved each other dearly. They had, however, no children, though they wished for them very much, and the woman prayed for them day and night, but still they had none. Now there was a courtyard in front of their house, in which it was a juniper tree, and one day in winter the woman was standing beneath it, paring herself an apple, and while she was paring herself the apple, she cut her finger, and the blood fell onto the snow. "Ah," said the woman, and sighed right heavily, and looked at the blood before her, and was most unhappy. "Ah, if I had but a child as red as blood and white as snow." And while she thus spoke, she became quite happy in her mind, and felt just as if there was going to happen. Then she went into the house, and a month went by, and the snow was gone, and 2 months, then everything was green, and 3 months, and then all the flowers came out of the earth, and 4 months, and then all the trees in the wood grew thicker, and the green branches were all closely entwined, and the birds sang until the wood resounded and the blossoms fell from the trees. Then the 5th month passed away, and she stood under the juniper tree, which smelled so sweetly that her heart leapt, and she fell onto her knees and was beside herself with joy. And when the 6th month was over, and the fruit was large and fine, and then she was quite still, and the 7th month she snatched at the juniper berries and ate them greedily. Then she grew sick and sorrowful, and then the 8th month passed, and she called her husband to her, and wept and said, "If I die, then bury me beneath the juniper tree." Then she was quite comforted and happy until the next month was over, and then she had a child as white as snow and as red as blood, and when she beheld it, she was so delighted that she died. Then her husband buried her beneath the juniper tree, and he began to weep sore. After some time he was more at ease, and he thought and though he still wept, he could bear it. And after some time longer he took another wife. By the second wife he had a daughter, but the first wife's child was a little son, and he was as red as blood and as white as snow. When the woman looked at her daughter, she loved her very much, but then she looked at the little boy, and it seemed to cut her to the heart, for the thought came into her mind that he would always stand in her way, and she was forever thinking how she could get all the fortune for her daughter, and the evil one filled her mind with this till she was quite wroth with the little boy, and she pushed him from one corner to the other, and slapped him here, and cuffed him there, until the poor child was in continual terror, for when he came out of school he had no peace in any place. One day, the woman had gone upstairs to her room, and her little daughter went up too, and said, "Mother, give me an apple." "Yes, my child," said the woman, and gave her a fine apple out of the chest, but the chest had a great heavy lid with a great sharp iron lock. "Mother," said the little daughter, "is brother not to have one too?" This made the woman angry, but she said, "Yes, when he comes out of school." When she saw from the window that he was coming, it was just as if the devil entered into her, and she snatched at the apple and took it away again from her daughter and said, "You shall not have one before your brother." Then she threw the apple into the chest and shut it. Then the little boy came in at the door, and the devil made her say to him kindly, "My son, will you have an apple?" And she looked wickedly at him. "Mother," said the little boy, "how dreadful you look. Yes, give me an apple." Then it seemed to her as if she were forced to say to him, "Come with me." And she opened the lid of the chest and said, "Take an apple for yourself." And while the little boy was stooping inside, the devil prompted her, and crash! She shut the lid down, and his head flew off and fell among the red apples. Then she was overwhelmed with terror and thought, "If I could but make them think it was not done by me." So she went upstairs to her room, to her chest of drawers, and she took a white handkerchief out of the top drawer and set the head on the neck again, and folded the handkerchief so that nothing could be seen. And she set him out on a chair in front of the door and put the apple in his hand. After this, Marlinchen came into the kitchen to her mother, who was standing by the fire with a pan of hot water before her, which she was constantly stirring round. "Mother," said Marlinchen, "brother is sitting at the door, and he looks quite white and has an apple in his hand. I asked him to give me the apple, but he did not answer me, and I was quite frightened." "Go back to him," said her mother, "and if he will not answer you, give him a box on the ear." So Marlinchen went to him and said, "Brother, give me that apple." But he was silent, and she gave him a box on the ear, whereupon his head fell off. Marlinchen was terrified and began crying and screaming, and ran off to her mother and said, "Alas, mother, I have knocked my brother's head off." And she wept and could not be comforted. "Marlinchen," said the mother, "what have you done? But be quiet and let no one know it. It cannot be helped now. We will make him into black puddings." Then the mother took the little boy and chopped him in pieces, put him into the pan, and made him into black puddings. But Marlinchen stood by weeping and weeping, and all her tears fell into the pan, and there was no need of any salt. But then the father came home, and sat down to dinner, and said, "But where is my son?" And the mother served up a great dish of black puddings, and Marlinchen wept and could not leave off. Then the father again said, "But where is my son?" "Ah," said the mother, "he has gone across the country to his mother's great-uncle. He will stay there a while." And what is he going to do there? He did not even say goodbye to me." "Oh, he wanted to go and asked me if he might stay 6 weeks. He is well taken care of there." "Ah," said the man, "I feel so unhappy lest all should not be right. He ought to have said goodbye to me." With that he began to eat and said, "Marlinchen, why are you crying? Your brother will certainly come back." Then he said, "Ah, wife, how delicious this food is. Give me some more." And the more he ate, the more he wanted to have, and he said, "Give me some more. You shall have none of it. It seems to me as if it were all mine." And he ate and threw all the bones under the table until he had finished the whole. But Marlinchen went away to her chest of drawers and took her best silk handkerchief out of the bottom drawer, and got all the bones from beneath the table, and tied them up in her silk handkerchief, carried them outside the door, weeping tears of blood. Then she lay down under the juniper tree on the green grass, and after she had lain down there, she suddenly felt light-hearted, and did not cry any more. Then the juniper tree began to stir itself, and the branches parted asunder, and moved together again, just as if someone were rejoicing and clapping his hands. At the same time a mist seemed to arise from the tree, and in the center of this mist it burned like a fire, and a beautiful bird flew out of the fire singing magnificently, and he flew high up into the air, and when he was gone, the juniper tree was just as it had been before, and the handkerchief with the bones was no longer there. Marlinchen, however, was as gay and happy as if her brother were still alive, and she went merrily into the house and sat down to dinner and ate. But the bird flew away and lighted on a goldsmith's house, and began to sing. My mother, she killed me. My father, he ate me. My sister, little Marlinchen, gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Quit, quit, what a beautiful bird I am. The goldsmith was sitting in his workshop making a golden chain when he heard the bird which was singing on his roof, and very beautiful the song seemed to him. He stood up, but as he crossed the threshold he lost one of his slippers. But he went away right up the middle of the street with one shoe on and one sock, and had his apron on, and in one hand he had the golden chain, and in the other the pincers, and the sun was shining brightly on the street. Then he went right on and stood still, and said to the bird, Bird, said he then, how beautifully you can sing. Sing me that piece again. No, said the bird, I'll not sing it twice for nothing. Give me the gold chain, and then I will sing it again for you. There, said the goldsmith, there is the gold chain for you. Now, sing me that song again. Then the bird came and took the gold chain in his right claw, and went and sat in front of the goldsmith and sang. My mother, she killed me. My father, he ate me. My sister, little Marlinchen, gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Quit, quit, what a beautiful bird am I. Then the bird flew away to a shoemaker, and lighted on his roof, and sang, My mother, she killed me. My father, he ate me. My sister, little Marlinchen, gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Quit, quit, what a beautiful bird I am. The shoemaker heard that and ran out of the doors in his shirt sleeves, and looked up at his roof, and was forced to hold his hand before his eyes lest the sun should blind him. Bird, said he, how beautifully you can sing. Then he called in his door, Wife, just come outside. There is a bird. Look at that bird. He certainly can sing. Then he called his daughter and children and apprentices, boys and girls, and they all came up to the street and looked at the bird and saw how beautiful he was, and what fine red and green feathers he had, and how like real gold his neck was, and how the eyes in his head shone like stars. Bird, said the shoemaker, now sing me that song again. Nay, said the bird, I do not sing twice for nothing. You must give me something. Wife, said the man, go to the garret. Up the top shelf there stands a pair of red shoes. Bring them down. Then the wife went and brought the shoes. There, bird, said the man, now sing me that piece again. Then the bird came and took the shoes in his left claw and flew back on the roof and sang. My mother, she killed me. My father, he ate me. My sister, little Marlinchen, gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Quit, quit, what a beautiful bird am I. And when he had finished his song, he flew away. In his right claw he had the chain, and in his left the shoes. And he flew far away to a mill, and the mill went clip-clap, clip-clap, clip-clap. And in the mill sat 20 miller's men, hewing stone and cutting, hick-hack, hick-hack, hick-hack. And the mill went clip-clap, clip-clap, clip-clap. Then the bird went and sat on a lime tree which stood in front of the mill and sang, My mother, she killed me. Then one of them stopped working. My father, he ate me. Then 2 more stopped working and listened to that. My sister, little Marlinchen. Then 4 more stopped, gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief. Now 8 only were hewing. Laid them beneath, now only 5, the juniper tree, and now only 1. Quit, quit, what a beautiful bird am I. Then the last stopped also, and heard the last words. Bird, said he, how beautifully you sing. Let me too hear that. Sing that once more for me. Nay, said the bird, I will not sing twice for nothing. Give me the millstone, then I will sing it again. Yes, said he. If it belonged to me only, you should have it. Yes, said the others. If he sings again, he shall have it. Then the bird came down, and the 20 millers all set to work with a beam and raised the stone up. And the bird stuck his neck through the hole and put the stone on as if it were a collar, and flew on to the tree again, and sang, My mother, she killed me. Thy father, he ate me. My sister, little Marlenchen, gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Quit, quit, what a beautiful bird am I. And when he had done singing, he spread his wings, and in his right claw he had the chain, and in his left the shoes, and round his neck the millstone, and he flew far away to his father's house. In the room sat the father, the mother, and Marlenchen at dinner. The father said, How light-hearted I feel, how happy I am. Nay, said the mother, I feel so uneasy, just as if a heavy storm were coming. Marlenchen, however, sat weeping and weeping, and then came the bird flying. And as it seated itself upon the roof, the father said, Ah, I feel so truly happy, and the sun is shining so beautifully outside. I feel just as if I were to see some old friend again. Nay, said the woman, I feel so anxious, my teeth chatter, and I seem to have fire in my veins. And she tore her stays open, but Marlenchen sat in a corner crying, and held her plate before her eyes, and cried till it was quite wet. Then the bird sat on the juniper tree and sang, My mother, she killed me. Then the mother stopped her ears, and shut her eyes, and would not see or hear, but there was a roaring in her ears like the most violent storm, and her eyes burnt and flashed like lightning. My father, he ate me. Ah, mother, says the man, that is a beautiful bird. He sings so splendidly, and the sun shines so warm, and there is a smell just like cinnamon. My sister, little Marlenchen. Then Marlenchen laid her head on her knees and wept without ceasing. But the man said, I am going out. I must see the bird quite close. Oh, don't go, said the woman. I feel as if the whole house were shaking and on fire. But the man went out and looked at the bird. Gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Quit, quit, what a beautiful bird am I. On this the bird let the golden chain fall, and it fell exactly round the man's neck, and so exactly round that it fitted beautifully. Then he went in and said, Just look what a fine bird that is, and what a handsome golden chain he has given me, and how pretty it is. But the woman was terrified, and fell down on the floor in the room, and her cap fell off her head. Then sang the bird once more, My mother, she killed me. Would that I were 1,000 feet beneath the earth, so as not to hear that. My father, he ate me. Then the woman fell down again, as if dead. My sister, little Marlenchen. Ah, said Marlenchen, I too will go out and see if the bird will give me anything. And she went out. Gathered together all my bones, tied them in a silken handkerchief. Then he threw down the shoes to her, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Quit, quit, what a beautiful bird am I. Then she was light-hearted and joyous, and she put on the new red shoes and danced and leaped into the house. Ah, she said, I was so sad when I went out, and now I am so light-hearted. That is a splendid bird. He has given me a pair of red shoes. Well, said the woman, and sprang to her feet, and her hair stood up like flames of fire. I feel as if the world were coming to an end. I too will go out and see if my heart feels lighter. And as she went out to the door, crash! The bird threw down the millstone on her head, and she was entirely crushed by it. The father and Marlenchen heard what had happened and went out, and smoke, flames, and fire were rising from the place. And when that was over, there stood the little brother, and he took his father and Marlenchen by the hand, and all three were right glad, and they went into the house to dinner and ate. The end. Wow. This was also very dark. Happy ending? But do you think it's a real happy ending, or do you think they're all dead at the end? Like even the father and the sister. Don't murder? I think don't murder is a good one. Maybe like don't be jealous of a child. Good ending. That's true. I mean, a lot of fairy tales are... Well, I don't know actually. Are they meant to be taken symbolically, or are they meant to be taken literally? Or both, maybe. Was there literally... Did the boy literally turn into the bird? Both? Yeah. I don't know. I like it though. I was very scared when she made him into black pudding. That was quite disturbing. Especially also when she put his head on with a handkerchief and made the little sister, guilted her into thinking that she killed him. She is pretty evil. Pretty unforgivable. Pretty much extremely 100% scum. But at least she was crushed in the end. Little sister is the best character though. For gathering up the bones. Putting them under the juniper tree. Quit. I like the use of repetition as well in fairy tales. Wow, that was certainly a dark one. Should we read one of the classics maybe? Or I wonder if there's a happy one. A cute one. What's this one? Wait, this is so short. Isn't this short? Happy birthday, Perseus. Happy birthday. Do you have a request for your birthday, Perseus? If there's a Brothers Grimm fairy tale you like, let me know. I'll read it. I have to watch the chat. But let me know if you see as well. If Perseus wants to request any. Sorry to put you on the spot. If you don't have one, that's fine too. Not to put you on the spot. Better pick a good one. Oh, he said he wished he had one but doesn't know. Okay. Oh, I see. No problem. I'm just trying to pawn off the weight of choosing a story. Let's read this one. This one is like super short. I don't know what it's about, but it's really short. So we might as well read it, right? Death? We'll see. No, I see the last sentence. It should be good. This next story is The Star Money. There was once upon a time a little girl whose father and mother were dead, and she was so poor that she no longer had a room to live in or a bed to sleep in, And at last she had nothing else but the clothes she was wearing and a little bit of bread in her hand, which some charitable soul had given her. She was good and pious, however, and as she was thus forsaken by all the world, she went forth into the open country, trusting in the good God. Then a poor man met her, who said, "Ah, give me something to eat. I am so hungry." She handed him the whole of her piece of bread and said, "May God bless you," and went onwards. Then came a child who moaned and said, "My head is so cold, give me something to cover it with." So she took off her hood and gave it to him, and when she had walked a little further, she met another child who had no jacket and was frozen with cold. Then she gave it her own, and a little farther on one begged for a frock, and she gave away that also. At length she got into a forest, and it had already become dark, and there came yet another child, and asked for a shirt, and the good little girl thought to herself, "It is a dark night, and no one sees you. You can very well give your shirt away," and took it off and gave away that also. And as she stood, and had not one single thing left, suddenly some stars from heaven fell down, and they were nothing else but hard, smooth pieces of money. And although she had just given her shirt away, she had a new one which was of the very finest linen. Then she put the money into it and was rich all the days of her life. Okay. The end. Isn't there another story that's like this? Like someone traveling and they keep giving things away again and again until they have nothing left. The rainbow fish. I feel like there was another one. Yeah, maybe the giving tree. Maybe every story does this. Fruits basket. I feel like that's actually what I was thinking of. I think I was actually thinking of fruits basket. Should we read some Poe? Oh my goodness, Poe wrote a lot of things. This is a poem called A Valentine. Oh, I see. I'm looking at his poems. They're short. I can read this short poem. A Valentine by Edgar Allan Poe. We have to write. It is Valentine's. Oh, but poems are hard to read. I think I did read a poem in one stream. For her this rhyme is penned, whose luminous eyes, brightly expressive as the twins of Leda, shall find her own sweet name that nestling lies. Upon the page, enwrapped from every reader, search narrowly the lines. They hold a treasure, divine, a talisman, an amulet that must be worn at heart. Search well the measure, the words, the syllables, do not forget the trivialest point, or you may lose your labor. And yet there is in this no Gordian knot, which one might not undo without a saber. If one could merely comprehend the plot, enwritten upon the leaf where now are peering eyes scintillating soul, there lies paradise. 3 eloquent words oft uttered in the hearing of poets by poets, as the name is a poet's too. Its letters, although naturally lying, like the Knight Pinto, Mendez Fernando, still form a synonym for truth. Cease trying. You will not read the riddle, though you do the best you can do. I feel like I have to read this like 3 more times to understand it. swear words. Not just you. I think that's normal. Well, I feel like for most poetry, like, the meaning is kind of densely packed. You know? Like, each line, you have to contain so much meaning inside it that you do have to, like, actually analyze it to get the meaning out. And they might have many different meanings. But yeah, they are nice for comfy listening. Poem analysis stream. I'm trying to analyze this one. It's a poem about poems. Is it just a poem about love poems? A meta poem? And you have to see right here, the words, the syllables, do not forget the trivialist point or you may lose your labor. It's literally saying, like, make sure you pay attention, read the whole thing. And yet there is in this no Gordian knot which one might not undo without a saber, if one could merely comprehend the plot, which one might not undo without a saber, a knot that cannot be untied without a sword. What is the Gordian knot? Is that just a type of knot, or is it... oh, it's mythology. The Gordian knot is an ancient Greek legend of Phrygian Gordium, associated with Alexander the Great, who is said to have cut the knot in 333 BC. It is often used as a metaphor for an intractable problem, untying an impossibly tangled knot, solved easily by finding an approach to the problem that renders the perceived constraints of the problem moot. Cutting the Gordian knot. That's pretty good, actually. That's a useful reference to have. I'm gonna reference that now. But I don't know, does it not feel wrong to cut the knot? No, I guess it just means, like... if it does feel kind of wrong. It's not meant to be cut. But yeah, it's smart. Thinking outside the box. But it says there is in this no Gordian knot. There is none in this poem, so we don't have to cut the poem. We can understand it by unraveling it. And written upon the leaf where now are peering eyes scintillating soul. The poem reveals the soul. 3 eloquent words oft uttered in the hearing of poets by poets, as the name is a poet's too. Are the words, I love you? Who is Mendes Ferdinando? This is a cute poem for Poe, unless I'm completely misunderstanding it. The Osgood Valentine. Oh, this is an article about this poem. Ferdinando. I'm sorry, I keep saying his name wrong. Ferdinando Mendes Pinto was a 16th century traveler who was regarded as a famous teller of lies. His name, in fact, became so associated with falsehoods that the saying was that he only told the truth when he admitted to being a liar. Only by confessing his many tall tales did his name become a synonym for truth. Interestingly, Poe's enemy, Charles Briggs, used the pseudonym Ferdinand Mendoza Pinto to write a series of columns for a New York paper, a pen named Poe dryly described as apt. I love hearing about old writer feuds. The Poe lore. His enemy. Alright. Its letters, although naturally lying. So he put this in? Do you think he wrote this? This is just like a roast against the pseudonym of his rival right here? Is that why? Yeah, was it just a diss? Is that why he just put this in? Okay, well that was a good one. Poem analysis. I like learning about it too. I feel like I've just learned something. A dream and a dream within a dream. There's two, a dream within a dream. Oh, they're the same. A dream. Book club. I do want to have book club. I'm just gonna write Poe. For now. Here, I will read these poems. Poems as well. Oh, Percy's recommended Hansel and Gretel. Let's read Hansel and Gretel. I don't know if I've read the original one. We'll read it after Poe. Because I did want to read one of the classic ones. So that's perfect. More cannibalism. You guys know how I feel about cannibalism in fiction. And in real life, I guess. Let's read the poem A Dream by Edgar Allan Poe. In visions of the dark night, I have dreamed of joy departed, but a walking dream of life and light hath left me broken-hearted. Ah, what is not a dream by day to him whose eyes are cast on things around him with a ray turned back upon the past? That holy dream, while all the world were childing, hath cheered me as a lovely beam, a lonely spirit guiding. What thought that light through storm and night so trembled from afar? What could be there more purely bright in truth's day star? Again, the first read through is like, it's just words that sound nice together. If I read it wrong, chiding, not childing. Oops. Like a word equation. That's a pretty good way of looking at it. And then this one is a dream within a dream. take this kiss upon the brow, and in parting from you now, thus much let me avow, you are not wrong who deem that my days have been a dream. Yet if hope has flown away, in a night or in a day, in a vision or in none, is it therefore the less gone? All that we see or seem is but a dream within a dream. I stand amid the roar of a surf-tormented shore, and I hold within my hand grains of the golden sand. How few, yet how they creep through my fingers to the deep. While I weep, oh God, can I not grasp them with a tighter clasp? Oh God, can I not save one from the pitiless wave? Is all that we see or seem but a dream within a dream? Word wrong. I hate when you're reading a poem and you read the word wrong. It ruins the flow. We need to go deeper. Yeah, Poe is pretty good. Probably not surprising. You guys wanted to read The Raven? I read The Black Cat and it was very sad. Well, not really. It was kind of painful for a cat reader. Or cat liker. Cat lover? I cannot talk anymore. The Raven's so long. It's not that long. It's not longer than some of the other ones we read. Telltale Heart is really good. That one might be my favorite. We can read The Raven, and then we can read Hansel and Gretel. The Raven's pretty long. Am I looking at an abridged version then? How long do you mean by pretty long? Oh, long for a poem? Okay. I thought we're talking long for a story. It's not too long to read, so I will read it. The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as if someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door, "only this, and nothing more." Ah, distinctly I remembered it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow. Sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here for evermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each pure curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stopped repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door, some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This is it, and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore, but the fact is, as I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door, darkness there, and nothing more." Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before, but the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered, "Lenore." This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, "Lenore," merely this, and nothing more. back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning. Soon again I heard a tapping, somewhat louder than before. Surely, said I, surely this is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more. Open here I flung the shutter when, with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mine of lord or lady perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird, beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore, though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou, I said, art sure no craven, ghastly, grim, and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore. Quoth thy raven, nevermore. Much I marveled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird upon his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door, with such name as Nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing further then he uttered, not a feather then he fluttered. 'Tis I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before, on the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said, nevermore. Startled at the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken, doubtless, said I, what it utters is its only stock in store, caught from some unhappy master, whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster, till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore of never, nevermore. But the raven still beguiling all my fancy into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. There upon the velvet sinking I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking nevermore. This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing, to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining, on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated over, but whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight gloating o'er, she shall press nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee respite, respite, and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget his lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet evil if bird or devil, whether tempter sent or whether tempest tossed thee here astore, desolate yet all daunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Aidenn, it shall clasp a sainted maiden, whom the angels named Lenore, clasp a rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels named Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word our sign in parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked, upstarting. Get thee back into the tempest, and that night's Plutonian shore. Leave no back plume as a token of that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak out from my heart, and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight over him streaming throws his shadows on the floor. And my soul from out that shadow lies floating on the floor, shall be lifted nevermore. The end. I'm noticing there's a real trend of Poe characters being deeply disturbed by animals just existing. The Raven is really good though. It makes me want to write poetry. It makes me want to do like a study of Poe and try to write a poem in Poe's style. I really enjoy this style. Yeah, it sounds really nice when it's read aloud too, I think. Although I messed it up a little. Well, I think that's to be expected when you're like sight reading a poem, basically. There's some almost tongue twisters in there, but if I read it perfectly, that would be good. That would be very satisfying. I know, it's like he could totally create a fire rap. I don't know. I don't know. I really like this style of poetry. Like, I think, well, I know this is very reductive of poems, but I'm not really into the poetry that's like roses are red, violets are blue, blah 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 blah. I like this style where it's like sentences. Like the sentences don't end at each line. You know, like the sentences continue through the line, but it's still like rhymes, like within the sentences. Yeah, I guess it is a more free form. Yeah. I really liked, well, there's a lot of parts I really liked. I liked this part. Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou, I said, art sure no craven, ghastly grim, an ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore. Sounds so good. I'm a fan of Poe. I want to try to write something like this, just to see if I can. I mean, obviously, I don't think I can write at Poe's level, but I want to try. It's inspiring. Try to write a poem. Because I really like reading poetry. I think that's something I've realized. Okay, let's read Hansel and Gretel. A classic. Okay. Hansel and Gretel. Hard by a great forest dwelt a poor woodcutter with his wife and his 2 children. Sounds familiar. The boy was called Hansel and the girl Gretel. He had little to bite and to break, and once when great dearth fell on the land, he could no longer procure even daily bread. Now when he thought over this night in his bed and tossed about in his anxiety, he groaned and said to his wife what it is to become of us. How are we to feed our poor children when we no longer have anything even for ourselves? I'll tell you what, husband, answered the woman. Early tomorrow morning we will take the children out into the forest to where it is the thickest. There we will light a fire for them and give each of them one more piece of bread, and then we will go to our work and leave them alone. They will not find the way home again, and we shall be rid of them. No, wife, said the man, I will not do that. How can I bear to leave my children alone in the forest? The wild animals would soon come and tear them to pieces. Oh, you fool, said she, then we must all four die of hunger. You may as well plane the planks for our coffins. And she left him no peace until he consented. But I feel very sorry for the poor children all the same, said the man. The two children had also not been able to sleep for hunger and had heard what their stepmother had said to their father. Gretel wept bitter tears and said to Hansel, Now all is over with us. Be quiet, Gretel, said Hansel. Do not distress yourself. I will soon find a way to help us. And when the old folks had fallen asleep, he got up, put on his little coat, opened the door below and crept outside. The moon shone brightly, and the white pebbles which lay in front of the house glittered like real silver pennies. Hansel stopped and stuffed the little pocket of his coat with as many as he could get in. Then he went back and said to Gretel, Be comforted, dear little sister, and sleep in peace. God will not forsake us. And he lay down again in his bed. When day dawned, but before the sun had risen, the woman came and awoke the two children, saying, Get up, you sluggards. We are going into the forest to fetch wood. She gave each a little piece of bread and said, There is something for you for dinner, but do not eat it up before then, for you will get nothing else. Gretel took the bread under her apron, as Hansel had the pebbles in his pocket. Then they all set out together on the way to the forest. When they had walked a short time, Hansel stood still and peeped back at the house, and did so again and again. His father said, Hansel, what are you looking at there and staying behind for? Pay attention and do not forget how to use your legs. Ah, father, said Hansel, I am looking at my little white cat, which is sitting up on the roof and wants to say goodbye to me. The wife said, Fool, this is not your little cat. This is the morning sun which is shining on the chimneys. Hansel, however, had not been looking back at the cat, but had been constantly throwing out one of the white pebble stones out of his pocket on the road. When they had reached the middle of the forest, the father said, Now, children, pile up some wood, and I will light a fire, that you may not be cold. Hansel and Gretel gathered brushwood together, and high as a little hill. The brushwood was lighted, and when the flames were burning very high, the woman said, Now, children, lay yourselves down by the fire and rest. We will go into the forest and cut some wood. When we have done, we will come back and fetch you away. Hansel and Gretel sat by the fire, and when noon came, each ate a little piece of bread. And as they heard the strokes of the wood axe, they believed that their father was near. It was not the axe, however, but a branch which had fastened to a withered tree which the wind was blowing backwards and forwards. And as they had been sitting such a long time, their eyes closed with fatigue, and they fell fast asleep. When at last they awoke, it was already dark night. Gretel began to cry and said, How are we to get out of the forest now? But Hansel comforted her and said, Just wait a little until the moon has risen, and then we will soon find the way. And when the full moon had risen, Hansel took his little sister by the hand and followed the pebbles which shone like newly coined silver pieces and showed them the way. They walked the whole night long, and by break of dawn came once more to their father's house. They knocked at the door, and when the woman opened it and saw that it was Hansel and Gretel, she said, You naughty children, why have you slept so long in the forest? We thought you were never coming back at all. The father, however, rejoiced, for it had cut him to the heart to leave them behind alone. Not long afterwards, there was once more a great dearth throughout the land, and the children heard their mother say at night to their father, Everything is eaten again. We have only one half loaf left, and that is the end. The children must go. We will take them farther into the wood, so that they will not find their way out again. There is no other means of saving ourselves. The man's heart was heavy, and he thought it would be better for you to share the last mouthful with your children. The woman, however, would listen to nothing that he had to say, but scolded and reproached him. He who says A must say He who says A must say B. Likewise. And as he had yielded the first time, he had to do so a second time also. The children, however, were still awake and had heard the conversation when the old folks were asleep. Hansel again got up and wanted to go out and pick up pebbles as he had done before, but the woman had locked the door, and Hansel could not get out. Nevertheless, he comforted his little sister and said, "Do not cry, Gretel. Go to sleep quietly, and the good God will help us." Early in the morning came the woman and took the children out of their beds. Their piece of bread was given to them, but it was still smaller than the time before. On the way into the forest, Hansel crumpled his in his pocket and often stood still and threw a morsel on the ground. "Hansel, why do you stop and look round?" said the father. "Go on." "I am looking back at my little pigeon, which is sitting on the roof, and wants to say goodbye to me," answered Hansel. "Fool," said the woman, "that is not your little pigeon. That is the morning sun that is shining on the chimney." Hansel, however, little by little, threw all the crumbs on the path. The woman led the children still deeper into the forest, where they had never in their lives been before. Then a great fire was again made, and the mother said, "Just sit there, you children, and when you are tired you may sleep a little. We are going into the forest to cut wood, and in the evening when we are done, we will come and fetch you away." When it was noon, Gretel shared her piece of bread with Hansel, who had scattered his by the way. Then they fell asleep and evening passed, but no one came to the poor children. They did not awake until it was dark night, and Hansel comforted his little sister and said, "Just wait, Gretel, till the moon rises, then we shall see the crumbs of bread which I have strewn about. They will show us the way home again." When the moon came out, they set out, but they found no crumbs, for the many thousands of birds which fly in about the woods and fields had picked them all up. Hansel said to Gretel, "We shall soon find the way," but they did not find it. They walked the whole night and all the next day too, from morning till evening, but they did not get out of the forest, and were very hungry, for they had nothing to eat but 2 or 3 berries, which grew on the ground. And as they were so weary that their legs would carry them no longer, they lay down beneath a tree and fell asleep. It was now 3 mornings since they had left their father's house. They began to walk again, but they always came deeper into the forest, and if help did not come soon, they must die of hunger and weariness. When it was midday, they saw a beautiful snow-white bird sitting on a bough, which sang so delightfully that they stood still and listened to it. And when its song was over, it spread its wings and flew away before them, and they followed it until they reached a little house, on the roof of which it alighted. And when they approached the little house, they saw it was built of bread and covered with cakes, but that the windows were of clear sugar. "We will set to work on that," said Hansel, "and have a good meal. I will eat a bit of the roof, and you, Gretel, can have some of the window. It will taste sweet." Hansel reached up above and broke off a little of the roof to try to see how it tasted, and Gretel leaned against the window and nibbled at the panes. Then a soft voice cried from the parlor, "Nibble, nibble, gnaw. Who is nibbling at my little house?" The children answered, the wind, the heaven-born wind," and went on eating without disturbing themselves. Hansel, who liked the taste of the roof, tore down a great piece of it, and Gretel pushed out the whole of one round window pane, sat down, and enjoyed herself with it. Suddenly the door opened, and a woman as old as the hills, who supported herself on crutches, came creeping out. Hansel and Gretel were so terribly frightened that they let fall what they had left in their hands. The old woman, however, nodded her head and said, "Oh, you dear children, who has brought you here? Do come in and stay with me. No harm shall happen to you." She took them both by the hand and led them into her little house. Then good food was set before them, milk and pancakes with sugar, apples, and nuts. Afterwards, 2 pretty little beds were covered with clean white linen, and Hansel and Gretel lay down in them and thought they were in heaven. The old woman had only pretended to be so kind. She was, in reality, a wicked witch who lay in wait for children and had only built the little house of bread in order to entice them here. When a child fell into her power, she killed it, cooked, and ate it, and that was a feast day with her. Witches have red eyes and cannot see far, but they have a keen scent like the beasts, and are aware when human beings draw near. When Hansel and Gretel came into her neighborhood, she laughed with malice and said mockingly, "I have them. They shall not escape me again." Early in the morning, before the children were awake, she was already up, and when she saw both of them sleeping and looking so pretty with their plump and rosy cheeks, she muttered to herself, "That will be a dainty mouthful." Then she seized Hansel with her shriveled hand, carried him into a little stable, and locked him behind a grated door. Scream as he might, it would not help him. Then she went to Gretel, shook her till she awoke, and cried, "Get up, lazy thing! Fetch some water and cook something good for your brother. He is in the stable outside and is to be made fat. When he is fat, I will eat him." Gretel began to weep bitterly, but it was all in vain, for she was forced to do what the wicked witch commanded. And now the best food was cooked for poor Hansel, but Gretel got nothing but crab shells. Every morning the woman crept to the little stable and cried, "Hansel, stretch out your finger that I may feel if you will soon be fat." Hansel, however, stretched out a little bone to her, and the old woman, who had dim eyes, could not see it, and thought it was Hansel's finger, and was astonished that there was no way of fattening him. When 4 weeks had gone by and Hansel still remained thin, she was seized with impatience and would not wait any longer. "Now then, Gretel," she cried to the girl, "stir yourself and bring some water. Let Hansel be fat or lean, tomorrow I will kill him and cook him." Ah, how the poor little sister did lament what she had to fetch the water, and how her tears did flow to her cheeks. "Dear God, do help us," she cried. "If the wild beasts in the forest had but devoured us, we should at any rate have died together." "Just keep your noise to yourself," said the old woman. "It won't help you at all." Early in the morning, Gretel had to go out and hang up the cauldron with the water and light the fire. "We will bake first," said the old woman. "I have already heated the oven and kneaded the dough." She pushed poor Gretel out to the oven, from which flames of fire were already darting. "Creep in," said the witch, "and see if it is properly heated, so that we can put the bread in." And once Gretel was inside, she intended to shut the oven and let her bake in it, and then she would eat her too. But Gretel saw what she had in mind, and said, "I do not know how I am to do it. How do I get in?" "Silly goose," said the old woman, "the door is big enough. Just look, I can get in myself." And she crept up and thrust her head into the oven. Then Gretel gave her a push that dove her far into it, and shut the iron door, and fastened the bolt. Oh, then she began to howl quite horribly, but Gretel ran away, and the godless witch was miserably burnt to death. Gretel, however, ran like lightning to Hansel, opened his little stable, and cried, "Hansel, we are saved! The old witch is dead!" Then Hansel sprang like a bird from its cage when the door is opened. How they did rejoice and embrace each other, and dance about and kiss each other. And as they had no longer any need to fear, they went into the witch's house, and in every corner there stood chests full of pearls and jewels. "They are far better than pebbles," said Hansel, and thrust into his pockets whatever he could be got in. And Gretel said, "I too will take something home with me," and filled her pinafore full. "But now we must be off," said Hansel, "that we may get out of the witch's forest." When they had walked for 2 hours, they came to a great stretch of water. "We cannot cross," said Hansel. "I see no footplank and no bridge, and there is also no ferry," answered Gretel, "but a white duck is swimming there. If I ask her, she will help us over." Then she cried, little duck, dost thou see? Hansel and Gretel are waiting for thee. There's never a plank or bridge in sight. Take us across thy back so white." The duck came to them, and Hansel seated himself on its back and told his sister to sit by him. "No," replied Gretel, "that will be too heavy for the little duck. She shall take us across one after the other." The good little duck did so, and when they were once safely across and had walked for a short time, the forest seemed to be more and more familiar to them. And at length they saw from afar their father's house. Then they began to run, rushed into the parlor, and threw themselves round their father's neck. The man had not known one happy hour since he had left the children in the forest. The woman, however, was dead. Gretel emptied her pinafore until pearls and precious stones ran about the room, and Hansel threw one handful after another out of his pocket to add to them. Then all anxiety was at an end, and they all lived together in perfect happiness. My tale is done. There runs a mouse. Whosoever catches it may make himself a big fur cap out of it. The end. How did she just die, do you think? What if she was the witch all along? Wouldn't that kind of make sense? Also, I don't know what that was about a mouse. That would be a twist. I think. She got death noted. I know, I'm glad that she did die though, because it would be a real shame if they went back and the evil stepmother was still there. What have we learned today, saplings? Don't murder. Stepmothers are evil. If your wife dies, never remarry, because the woman you remarry will surely be evil. Don't marry a snake. Don't make deals with magical creatures. And no magical pacts. Ducks are useful. Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that the duck just like took them across and like nothing bad happened. Like their plan just worked. Don't eat the black pudding. Children are yummy. No, wrong. Wrong answer. Wrong moral of the story. No cannibalism. This was fun. Thank you for reading with me. Kind of want to do another one of these. Or another reading stream. We could read something else too. There's probably a lot of good stuff in the public domain. If you guys are okay with reading old stuff. But I think there's a lot of good old books. It's cozy. Read a Fauna original. I have to write it first. That's the problem. I really like this music too. It's very cozy. Makes me feel like I'm in a magical forest. You're gonna use this spot as a sleep aid? That makes me happy. I'm glad. I wanted to create a cozy atmosphere. I would like to use my K100 for one of these eventually. I probably can eventually. I just have to do it on a good time. Figure out a good time where it'll be quiet. I will read the super chats in the next one because Gura is about to do her stream, I believe. Yes, must go watch. Gura, I want to watch too. I want to watch too. I don't even know what she's doing myself. It's a mystery to me too. I want to see. I want to learn. Yeah, Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this. Thank you for reading with me. I'm happy. This was very nice. Super cozy. And it was nice to read some of these stories because I actually haven't read most of them. I know, I love this BGM. I feel cozy. I feel at peace listening to it. I especially like reading poems. I'll have to read more poems. But alright, thank you guys very much for hanging out today. Oh, there's the Apex tournament. Tonight/tomorrow morning. I think I'm gonna like try to sleep before then. I don't know, sleep a little bit and then sleep a little after, maybe. But I will be there, and then I won't be streaming myself tomorrow, but on Sunday is more Hitman. So I will see you then. Thanks again for hanging out, and I will see you soon. Bye bye. Fun well. Bye bye. Thank you. Bye.